Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Creek This Week.
Creek Week.
So this is a production of Allen Creek Community Church where we have our intrepid pastoral staff and our executive pastor, Janora Gelly.
Yeah, which is something I wanted to address, Michael. We're not all gentlemen.
That's right.
Janora's not a gentleman.
And she's here for quality control to make sure the pastoral staff stay on track.
Yeah.
And it's our job to kind of inform you what's happening at AC3 in the month of September and on into October. And what would that be, Dan?
We're starting a new series around here called Walking Away. And we're going to be looking at kind of this. The church finds itself in a bit of a moment these days, doesn't it? The last few years of a lot of people walking away from their church participation, from their faith altogether. That's not. They don't always go together.
No, that's true.
And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's what we're going to look at is this phenomena of people walking away from the church. Now, we've kind of broken this down based on some categories that have been identified in a book by
Josh Porter.
Called Death to Deconstruction. And let's talk about that. What's the first one that he kind of listed out as a reason for people walking away?
Well, the first thing that Porter lays out is biblical illiteracy. And so this is... in fact, every one of these reasons that people walk away, there's two angles to all of them, and you can kind of see that each one has there's a setup inside, especially the evangelical church. That's our context. Especially inside the evangelical church, we're setting people up to walk away, but then there's also responsibility that people who walk away can and ought to take for the reason that they walked away.
So each of these five has something that the church needs to be responsible for, needs to own up to.
100%.
And then there's something that the individuals have to own in the process too.
Exactly.
So Alex, say something about this idea of biblical illiteracy. What would you say, what's the part that the person walking away has to own, real briefly?
Yeah, so the part that the person has to own is the fact that I think a lot of the time, as somebody who's in a lot of circles of people who are deconstructing, it's real easy for us to blame the church for our biblical illiteracy. So, like, for us to say, well, I don't really understand this, or I haven't learned how to exegesis a passage, or I don't know how to do a word study. Like, wow, the church is shallow for not teaching me these things. I think it's important for them to realize that we have the internet. It's called Google. And I think, biblical literacy is as much on the person as it is on the teacher, to do research on what does it look like to study your Bible? How do you study your Bible? All of those things. I believe the part in the church is we have created a biblically illiterate culture generation like that. Yeah. I think that's on us as a youth pastor.
We've been content to allow this to continue as people who are charged with serving these folks, and we've said this is all right.
Yeah,
this is okay.
As a youth pastor, I feel a heavy burden on that. It's just like it's my job to teach them how to understand and read the Bible for themselves.
Okay, so that's just one example of how there's kind of two sides to each coin. But let's really quickly touch on the other. Faith eaters, we're calling them. What's the second one?
Over politicization.
Ooh, that's my favorite.
Over politicization of the church, and so there, I think it's obvious when you consider, when you think about, well, what must the church own, and why would it lead to someone to walk out of the faith? Well, if someone looks at a church context and thinks that it's just stumping for certain political causes, and it seems like it's ignoring other political causes that might be actually as germane to the teaching of Jesus as these other things, then they realize, well, this is very partisan. And it seems like it turned the church into a default stumping ground for a particular political persuasion, and then that sort of evacuates the gospel of its transcendent authority. Like, is it over both parties? In the American context, or is it just like, is it bound and captured by one?
Okay, what's number three?
So the third one would be the problem of evil.
Okay, Alex, I got a question for you.
Yes.
About the problem of evil.
Yes.
Have you ever confronted that personally? Right? Why do bad things happen to good people?
That's a really good question, Dan. Once. Yeah, 100%. Like, I've asked that question. I think if that's what you're asking, I don't know that I've gotten a solid answer. From
Have you?
it.
When was the last time you asked it? When was the last time it entered your mind?
Funny, last week.
Okay, so I think that's really important to say that this is a legitimate. All of these, but this one in particular, is a really legitimate question that any honest spiritual seekers has to be confronted with.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's a
Yes.
there's a technical term for it, theophany, which is the study of why
Or theodicy.
theodicy. Excuse me, theophany, theodicy. Why bad things happen in a world that could otherwise be good. So that's a big one. That's legit. That's number 3. What's number 4?
Number 4 is the hypocrisy. So it's it's the Christian icon, pastoral leader, authoritative figure who turns out to have feet of clay and themselves is engaged in moral failure.
I just saw a picture of an African pastor. I think it's a Pentecostal church, and he's being carried on a palanquin by his congregation because he won't set foot on the sinful soil. So until the congregation can buy him a 2023 Range Rover,
That's the actual request?
yeah, then
Oh
they
my
carry him around.
gosh.
Yeah, so that's not helping out with the whole
No.
being
Right.
poor and not
That's awful.
seeking earthly treasure.
Yeah.
So there's another legit question to be struggled with.
Absolutely.
And the final one,
The final one is self-denial. And so this is one that is fascinating, and Josh Porter kind of talks about this as a faith eater that Jesus himself lays out. So if you look at these as sort of obstacles to faith, Jesus actually lays out self-denial as a reason to not follow him. And Porter actually just underlines how often Jesus is our appeal to come to Christ is something like, please, please, please come and become a Christian. And Jesus' appeal is often, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that?
have you really thought this through?
Have you really thought that through? Because, it's kind of a big deal. And I'm kind of a big deal. And like that really literally is Jesus putting self-denial as a reason why people will stumble coming into the kingdom. So that fifth one is set apart a little bit as special. Now, nevertheless, I think there's also something, again, that the deconstructor needs to take a look at and to say, did I come to Jesus to affirm all of my inner hopes, dreams, feelings, aspirations, and inclinations? And if so, then when I find Jesus to be pushing against that, I find it intolerable to follow him anymore. And that just means that we probably didn't do what Jesus said, which is count the cost. Before you come follow me, count the cost.
All right, final thought from you, Alex. Out of these 5, which do you think is the biggest, kind of the most frequently encountered with your students, with high school and middle schoolers?
All right, Jannar will answer. I'm just kidding.
Goo.
So, I think the biggest one I'm seeing with students, I would actually kind of do 2. Can I do 2 because I'm special?
Fine.
Okay. The 2 I'm seeing is the problem of evil and hypocrisy. Those are the 2 big ones. So I'm seeing, why do bad things happen to good people? Or why do bad things happen in general? Because even if you're not good, they still are like, why are bad things happening? And the other one would be the hypocrisy. Well, I heard about this pastor who did this thing, or I trusted a pastor, or I went to a church and I was hurt at that church. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe you'll find yourself really resonating with one of those 5, maybe all 5, or maybe this is more of an academic exercise for you. You just want to kind of understand this conversation that's going on wherever you find yourself. You may be in a real personal struggle with one or more of these things. We invite you to come. This is a place where it's going to be a dialogue about that.
Yep.
Let's cut to the chase, right? Spoiler alert, we think there are answers for all 5 of these
Yes.
that can put you in a place where you can trust Jesus. And come and check it out. So that's starting September 10th.
September 10th, week 1.
September 10th.
And then
Yep.
for the next 5 weeks, we'll be looking at that. So, and Genora will be preaching week 2.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
No, is it week 4?
Nice job.
I didn't realize that.
Great exegesis on that one. Yep. Great job.
Exegesis.
Great job, girlfriend.
She's learned how to exegese.
Yeah. She's not going to be biblically illiterate.
Oh my gosh.
She can already count to 2.
Yeah.
She'll know that there were unicorns.
Yep, that's right.